We've talked about it a lot here on the program, the shift from the El Nino to the La Nina weather pattern. And we've been in a neutral phase here recently, but if and when the transition to La Nina actually happens, it could get hotter and drier, even more so than next week. That doesn't mean diseases like tar spot, gray leaf spot, and rust can't appear and limit potential corn yield. Nick Groth with Syngenta joins us this morning. Nick, there's been tons of research done on managing disease pressure. So what are we learning that's maybe changing our approach to disease control?
One thing people might think is as it gets hotter and drier, there's going to be less disease pressure. So I have less need for a foliar fungicide to protect myself from those diseases. But I think what growers should really understand is even if we don't see a lot of disease pressure, these new deponent and solatinol technologies in Miravis Neo and Travapro, people should really expect they will still see an advantage to a fungicide application. Making that application will protect you if the weather does change.
So we had one of the wettest starts to our season here in the Eastern Corn Belt. What should growers be on the lookout for this year?
Really, regardless of the year, I would still be on the lookout for tar spot. It's just such a devastating disease that can move in really rapidly and take 60 bushels, 70 bushels off the table when it's a heavy disease early on. But I would also be on the lookout for diseases that still seem to have relevancy year in and year out, like northern corn leaf blight, gray leaf spot, and maybe to the southern part, southern rust would be another really common, potentially devastating disease.
Now, Nick, we had discussions last year around mid-season or so, and some farmers waited to make decisions about fungicide applications based, I think, largely, on economics. Input prices were up, and return on investment was a big deal.
You've got a large amount of acres to cover. I think it's important to start with a plan versus doing a wait and see approach. A disease like tar spot, for example, can infect the plant and start wreaking havoc within that plant 3 weeks prior to when you see those initial disease symptoms, those tar spot flecks on top of the leaf. So with that in mind, doing a scout and spray type of approach, you can really be overrun with the disease by the time you see it and make that fungicide application. So with those two things in mind, I think doing a planned approach, targeting that VT-R1, that's been our most consistent timing year in, year out for return on investment.
Okay, Nick, let's wrap up with some ideas about the potential for hot and dry weather later in the season. What are your recommendations?
So Miravis Neo is a really great product for us. It's really broad spectrum. It gives us good duration of control, really good potency on key diseases like tar spot, gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight. It has the added advantage of controlling Fusarium ear rot, which is a big deal for reducing mycotoxin and DON levels in the feed and giving our dairymen and our silage acres better high quality feed. We also really like that adaptogen molecule because it's really upped our game in the plant health space. So we're seeing a lot more return on investment from the Miravis Neo fungicide with the adaptogen technology.
Nick Groth with Syngenta, thanks for your insights this morning. We sure appreciate it. Every farm is different, so the best first step is obviously to have a discussion with your agronomist and come up with a plan. And if you want to find out more about the Syngenta products that Nick mentioned, simply go online to boostyourbushels.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.